Hello, and welcome to Acesomnyacs, a podcast where we talk about all things ace. I'm Jessie. My pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Alex. My pronouns are he, him.
Today, we're going to look at what is asexuality and just definitions from around the internet and then our definitions. Over to you, Alex.
Yep, we'll keep it pretty simple. We will start with Avon's definition, which I don't know who this podcast is going out to, but Avon is one of the first hubs that existed for asexuality on the internet, started by David J. and is some fucking year in the past. This is a swearing podcast, by the way. So an asexual person does not experience sexual attraction. They are not drawn to people sexually and do not desire to act upon attraction to others in a sexual way. Unlike celibacy, which is a choice to abstain from sexual activity, asexuality is an intrinsic part of who we are, just like the other sexual orientations. Asexuality does not make our lives any worse or better. We just face a different set of needs and challenges than most sexual people do. There is considerable diversity among the asexual community in the needs and experiences often associated with sexuality, including relationships, attraction, arousal, deadlines, sucking at video games, you name it.
All right, and I'll look at what Wikipedia says and what the Human Rights Campaign says. You know, the Human Rights Campaign, the equal sign people. All right, cool.
Never heard of it.
Asexuality, defined by Wikipedia, is asexuality is the lack of sexual attraction to others or low or absent interest in or desire for sexual activity. And Wikipedia says it may be considered a sexual orientation or lack thereof. That's just what they say. It may also be more widely categorized in a broad spectrum of asexual sub-identities, which we'll touch on.
One day.
Yes, one day.
Today. One day.
And the Human Rights Campaign, says asexual, often called ACE for short, refers to a complex or complete or partial lack of sexual attraction or lack of interest in sexual activity with others. Asexuality exists on a spectrum, and asexual people may experience no, little, or conditional sexual attraction. So those are all the big internet definitions. They basically say the same thing. Lack of sexual attraction or almost no sexual attraction.
Right.
So I don't know if
Wikipedia went into the spectrum of it all.
Right. So there is a spectrum. There's a bunch of different I don't even want to call them subcategories. That sounds bad. There's a bunch of different aspects under the umbrella of asexuality.
Yeah. Some of the notable ones would be demisexual and gray sexual.
Yeah, they're sometimes called gray ace or demi ace. And that also, sometimes people put aromanticism under that umbrella as well. That's another topic.
But yes, that is a topic for
one of our other ones. Today we want to focus on just what asexuality is defined as by ourselves, by the community, and the internet.
And potentially your dumbass parents. I'm sorry. I'm sure your parents are wonderful. My parents' definition is it's weird.
Let's see. My stepmom is like, oh, okay. I still love you.
That's a weird definition.
It is. Let's see. I'll jump into how I define it, I guess. To me, it's lack of sexual attraction, but it's like, what is sexual attraction? Which is something I don't know. I don't get it. I don't feel it. So I've never looked at anyone and been like, oh yeah, I want to do something dirty with them or sexual with them. I've never ever felt that for anyone. And I always expected that when I was growing up, I expected that I would eventually feel that, like, oh, this is just something that happens eventually. When you meet that person, it'll eventually happen. And that's one of the things that led me to realize I was asexual. Is that it's just never happened. It didn't come along. I never experienced it. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'm ace. And there's a good number of ace people that are sex repulsed. I'm a sex repulsed ace, but not everybody is.
And where did you find out about asexuality?
Well, that is a good question. From you.
Thanks,
Well,
Alex.
well, I did look up a little bit on Avon before I was directed to you, but you definitely helped me along in my journey a lot.
Yeah, we have a mutual friend uh who I live with at the current time in 2022 while World War III is starting. Um, and this person was it tends to like, oh hey Alex, I have someone who has ace questions, they know what it is, they accept it, and it's like, can I let them, I'm gonna have them talk to you. I'm like, sure, why the fuck not, right?
Right.
So and then that's how I talked to Jesse about asexuality.
Right. And the best part was, I said to Alex, I said, I feel these things and I'm wondering if I'm ace. And Alex was like, oh, yeah, you're definitely ace, which
Yep.
was hilarious to me.
Yeah, I'm not search your heart and find the truth kind of person. I'm just like, oh yeah, you're ace. Just put the stamp on the forehead, it's fine.
So, what is being ace mean to you?
So being ace to me, it's so sexual attraction to me is basically that sort of pull you have towards someone. You see them and it's like, wow, a night with them would probably be some real good fucking, right? Like, or like, oh, like insert body part here,
Ugh.
withdraw body part here. Ooh, that body part's nice. Wow, that body part's nice. I want the whole body. That'd be cool. And then me, I'm just like, no,
Nope.
don't touch me.
Don't touch
Do
me.
not
I want none of
perceive me. Right? It's like, hey Alex, I think you're cute. And like, I think that's a personal problem. Like, but but yeah,
Yeah.
in my college days, I discovered I was on a Christian forum of all places, God or not God, but Satan forgive me. Um, and I was like, oh, I don't think I like girls or boys. And they're like, oh, you must be asexual. That's what it is. And it was just like, you know, heavenly moment. Oh, like
Right.
it clicked, and I adopted it instantly. It was like, okay, this is what I am. And then I checked out Avon. I joined the forum.
Yeah.
Um, I think, but ultimately, what I found was that I
They
found it
really.
in 2007, and since then, I had ups and downs coming to terms with it. But ultimately, it was a nice, easy process, and I mean hard. But anyway, yeah, that's my journey.
Yeah, and for me, like I was dating someone, I guess. Yeah, we were dating. And they were shocked that I had never engaged in any sexual activity. It's completely shocked. They're like, never, never, like not once, like never. And I'm like, no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like,
I have a busy schedule.
I'm like, I don't know. I didn't. It never came up. And then I was like, well, I guess it did come up, but I never really wanted to. I didn't have a good reason to. Okay, well, maybe I'm asexual because I'd been thinking that I was and just looking it up, and then it obviously derailed our relationship because he was expecting sex, and I was like, I think I'm asexual. And then I talked to our mutual friend, and then I talked to Alex, and it was like, yeah, I'm definitely ace. And then over the years, it has popped up in my head like, oh, that explains that. I've been ace my whole life. And that's one of the things that you look at is that it's not really, while I always say I wish I had known this was an option when I was younger, it's not really an option. It's just, it's what you are, it's who you are. There's
Right.
no,
I think most of the major theories about how sexuality forms in general,
hmm
there are varied opinions on if one is made as such, or if they just are as such, or if it's
right,
chosen in some weird way. But ultimately, I don't think we have an active hand in deciding what our orientation is,
right.
like how we feel, and that applies to other LGBT plus
I,
identities.
yeah. Because, like, I don't think, especially in today's world, but even in earlier parts of human history, like, it's not easy to be different than the heteronormative world. And the majority of people in the LGBTQ community are not going to pick this if they have the choice.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. There's that powerful attachment drive.
yeah, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm already this demographic and this demographic. I don't want to add more to it.
Right.
So I don't need.
Like Yeah, like just add to the fucking pile, right?
That's just to say that it's not a choice. It's not celibacy. It's not I'm doing this for attention because most asexuals don't want to be bothered. So definitely
Right.
not
We're
for
just living our
attention.
lives.
The only time we bring it up is when you're like, hey, sexy, sexy, whatever. And we're like, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Right.
And that,
Right.
oh, that brings us to another word that you might hear us say often in this podcast, as well as other ace people, is aloe, is basically someone who's not ace.
Yep. That's all there is to it. There's no
It's someone
big
who,
moral fallout of it. It's
right, it's just
like
someone who's
part
not
of it.
ace or part of the ace spectrum. You're just
Right.
someone
Yeah.
who,
You're just not on the spectrum. It's not the end of the world.
right, you experience sexual attraction most likely. That's what
The
aloe
A is
people
for allosexual. Bam.
So, yeah, that's what it aloe. You experience
Right.
sexual attraction. Ace do not.
So we've
That's
transitioned to the what asexuality isn't phase of this episode.
right.
We already have what asexuality isn't is aromanticism. Uh,
Right.
aromanticism is ultimately someone who feels no romantic attraction, and while the two often travel together, it's not necessarily the same. There are plenty of aromantic people. There are plenty of asexual people who are romantic. I'm
Hmm.
sure you're hating your relationship right now. I'm kidding. I'm sure you're all in love and it's fine. But
Or you're loving it and it's great.
yeah, yeah, it's
And
great.
there's plenty of ace people that get together with other ace people
Hmm.
and you're
How
like
to do it? I don't know. Magic eye.
but there's also ace people that are especially on the ace and arrow romantic spectrum that I don't date. I don't want that headache. I have no desire for that headache. And then there's other people that are like, no, I know I have no sexual attraction, but I definitely want to be romantically involved with someone. And then there's what I'm probably wherever I'm at, because sometimes I feel like I'm aromantic, sometimes I feel like I'm not. And that's
And we're
my
gonna
own
explore it
journey.
live on this podcast.
We are going to explore it at some point.
Yeah, at some point. Yeah, we wanna dive
That's
deep
a
into I believe
whole
altruist
episode.
attraction, matter-normativity. Yeah, we have many topics prepared
Yes, we
to
have a lot
discuss
of
on this podcast.
great stuff for you guys. We
Yeah,
have a whole list. We put a whole document together to make sure we have entertainment for anyone who's listening to this.
anyone who's still tuned in.
Right after that hasn't been like, oh, okay, these chuckle fucks.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, I think it's going to be a great way because there's not that many Ace podcasts out there. A lot of them are kind of dead, but we want to do topics and
We
stuff
support
that
all of them.
we do support all of them. And like, we have a group that we're both a part of that we have all kinds of ideas from other people that are ace or arrow that just help us think about things differently, think about us outside the box, think about how we're similar, how we're different, and things that totally want to make this a safe space for ace people and possibly informative for allos. Technically, we don't really care if allos listen to it. Hi, allos, how you doing? But
Welcome to our shop.
welcome to us talking about how we don't fucking understand you.
From what I know, the feeling is mutual.
That's true.
But we
That's
do
true.
plan to tackle some topics that could be relevant to the Allo experience. I think we want to talk about an Allo arrow, how
Hmm.
what that life's like is like. You know,
Yeah, for someone
why are
who's
allos so horny all the damn time? We want to talk about sex positivity. We want to get
yes,
into some psychology. We want to get into other asexuality myths and
yeah.
shit allos say and shit like I don't know what the allo word for romantic people is. I should know this. I've been openly
I think
ace
it's
for
just romantic.
14 years. Yeah, we
We
want we
can
want to do so.
we'll look at
We're
those definitions.
we're millennials, so we're old as shit. So, but we do want to we want to try and have guests on when we can. We definitely want to cover other LGBT plus issues. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
definitely want to trans issues. We might go into some social issues. We have a big masturbation episode planned. Um, yeah,
It's
it's gonna
just
be great. I'm sure you love that fucking question. Oh, do you masturbate? It's like,
yeah, what
excuse me.
is that? I had a
It's like,
conversation with someone today about like how that's inappropriate to go up to someone you don't know and ask them if they masturbate. But people think it's fine to do with ace people. You find out someone's ace
yeah,
and you're like, "Oh, do you masturbate?" As though you have to justify the fact that you're ace, which is
I
very
forgot.
annoying.
It's
And we
like, I'm not
we
telling you about that.
we also have
Even
an
if I did,
episode entitled, at least I put it on our list of things to talk about, what not to ask ace people.
yeah.
That's going to be a
Um,
thing. How to be polite, because like, if can you imagine if you're out somewhere and you're like, oh yeah, I'm straight, and someone goes, oh, how do you do sex? And it's like, what? Why would you ask me that? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just a weird question to ask somebody. And a lot of people think that asexual people are sex repulsed and against sex. That's not true at all.
right.
Like,
We're not oppositional to sex.
you want to do the sexy times, do it. It's just as long as you're not doing it with us and you're getting consent. We don't care.
Right. And we'll probably talk about societal attitudes towards compulsory sexuality and
Yeah.
what ace people sort of have to deal with. Like, just
Yeah.
just the heat and other LGBT identity plus identities deal with on the reg. Like, that's just heaped onto our shoulders. But like, if you just
Yeah.
answer a question normally, like, oh, you're just obsessed with being ace. That's like the only thing you're about. Is like, no, I answered the question
Right.
as you
And
said it to me, like a normal person. Well, not a normal person, but like,
right. And that's another thing too, like, if you're coming upon our podcast, let's maybe say you're on your journey, you're trying to discover whether or not you're ace or somewhere under that umbrella, and you're just like, I don't know, and I feel really broken. You're not broken at all, and you're not different, and you're not weird. You're ace, and it's a great way to be, because I'm gonna tell you, it's less distracting from what I understand.
right. Well, we have different set of struggles. There are a lot of
Yeah.
things we can be spared the hassle of.
Right.
Some of us can be anyway. I know a lot of the relationship struggles are mostly associated with romantic
Yeah.
attraction, but as far as asexuality is concerned, that sex really jumbles up a lot of
Yeah.
the emotions.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard stuff like, I don't want to ruin our friendship with sex because it'll change it. And I guess that's a thing. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that would be a good topic to cover too.
Yeah.
I think we're both mostly identified as cisgendered, but
Mhm.
how that shakes out in our experience too, like people
Yeah.
trying to form sexual rivalries with you,
Right.
or being pursued, you know,
And it would be
and
nice to have
yeah,
a trans person possibly on that's ace or in
hmm
the ace spectrum, because then we can get even more perspectives. And that's one of the things we want to do with this podcast is not only just talk about ace issues, but get perspectives of other people on ace
and
issues. And
explore, like, if we're lucky, we might even find some brand new topic that
right.
will get us paid. I think the last thing we could cover is some questions you might ask yourself if you
Yeah.
know, like, if you're wondering if you're asexual or not. What There are some questions you'll ask yourself, right? So how do you know if you're ace?
Right. And that's one of the big things that you ask yourself, like, how do I know? And one thing that I'll touch on real quick is a lot of people try to attribute being asexual to having trauma, but that's not fair, because there's a lot of people who have had severe trauma, and some people have had sexual assault trauma, and they're not ace. And then there's
Nope.
people who've never had sexual assault trauma that are ace. So if you're in that group and you're like, well, this is just trauma, or someone is telling you it's just trauma, it could be trauma influence. But if you're ace, you're ace. It doesn't, trauma isn't an inherent part of it.
Yeah, we're gonna go in on modern psychology at some point and how fucked the system is and how they treat ace people. And we won't do it this episode, but will potentially divulge our the weird shit psychologists say to us. But do we have any practical questions, answers to questions, people who are seeking, answers if they're ace?
I know one thing that, because a number of us millennials grew up in religious environments of whatever kind of religious environment with it those strict things, those purity commitments, purity rings, purity pledges,
Oh yeah, I was spared that
saving
shit.
saving yourself for marriage. And I remember always thinking, why is this such a big deal? Why is it so hard for people to not have sex? I don't get it. Like, I don't know why this is a big deal. And I remember it being super easy. And anytime there was a purity pledge, because I was very indoctrined growing up, like, I'm like, oh, sure, I'll sign that pledge. I'll wear my purity ring. I don't know why this is so hard. Saving myself for my husband is really easy. And I didn't realize that was because I didn't experience sexual attraction. So there was no drive there to do anything. So it's
Right.
just,
And I
yeah,
imagine for for cisgendered men and well men in general and potentially other
mm,
identities, the relationship with sex is often one of conquest and taking numbers and
yeah,
being able to acquire sex is a social boon for
yeah,
people who identify with that.
yeah,
And
because there's
I
that
was mostly
whole,
empathetic to that,
yeah,
but
there's that whole, oh, being a virgin is a bad thing,
right.
even though
We're gonna talk about how
virginity
that's a lie.
itself is a whole lie, but that's another episode.
Right.
Um,
So again, we have
we have lots
we'll
planned
have
for
to
you guys.
do we'll have to do a short episode on people who are seeking answers to questions on
Yes.
asexuality. We'll make that a short thing, and that way it can be a standalone resource for people
Yeah.
who are searching and just happen to come across our podcast.
One of the things that we'll also like to do, since it's our first podcast, obviously,
Yeah, we're new at this. Please be nice.
I mean, if you leave a mean comment, we're not going to read it, but please be nice.
I
Um,
will read it, and I will feel very hard, and that I don't like to do that.
I will just be like, ah, whatever, but we'll face it. I mean,
I'll be dead, and you killed me. No, it's fine. Say whatever the hell you want.
yeah, just tell, but like one thing that if you have questions for us or like a topic you want us to cover, we're on all the social medias. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, something else that I'm missing.
YouTube.
Um, oh, YouTube. So these will hopefully go up on YouTube as well as all of the different podcast platforms. So you should be able to find us on Spotify, iTunes, uh, Apple. I just said iTunes. Never
All the
mind.
things, and yeah, and I hear ratings and reviews are good for that. So if you want to leave your mean comment on Apple, I probably won't see it because I never log in. So yeah.
But that's our goal. Our goal is one to have a safe space for ace people, is to answer questions for people curious on whether or not they're ace or somewhere in the ace spectrum, and allos. Hopefully, everything we talk about will make it so that allos don't have to ask those weird questions to their ace friends. And you can
And
just
we'll
listen to
try
our
not to be
podcast
alienating.
and just be like, "Oh, okay." And that way you don't have to ask that weird question. Like, you find out your coworker's ace, and you're like, "I really want to ask them if they masturbate." Don't do it. It's just
Just assume
inappropriate.
yes.
And that's the thing that I mean, we're gonna have a
And
whole
whatever
episode
they
on that,
masturbate
but
to,
like,
it's probably not weirder than the weird shit you masturbate to.
yeah. And another big thing is you're wondering if you're ace maybe, and you're like, but I enjoy sex. How? So that means I'm not ace. That's not necessarily true because it's the lack of sexual attraction, not the lack of sexual desire. Those are two
Well,
different
definitely.
things.
I, Jesse, I think we're both mostly repulsed.
Yes, we're both sex repulsed.
So So we do hope to get a few interviews,
Yes.
or maybe even a new co-host who is sex positive and can get all that shit out.
Right. Because we're both sex positive, but we're also sex repulsed. So
Yeah,
it's a weird, like, yeah, you do the sex stuff, I just don't want to hear about it.
seriously, I don't want to fucking hear about it.
Or watch. And that's another thing that could, as a wake up call to, am I asexual or not? One of the things for me was sex scenes in movies. I can't understand why they're there. They mess with the plot. They're long and obnoxious and boring.
I think
Like,
most allos actually even would agree that sex scenes in movies are generally not regarded very well, and sex in film and is rarely done well. But yeah, I have the same ick factor there.
yeah, because I just was like, I remember that's the whole reason that I don't like Battlestar Galactica, because there was just so many orgies. So many orgies. Unnecessary space orgies. Just
Well,
do
they
the
ain't got
bat.
nothing better to do. Like I don't blame them for that. That's just realistic.
There was
No,
plenty to do. There were
I didn't watch this, so
Cylons.
I literally don't know. I don't fucking know.
I know. But
But
there
we
was
actually will get into nerd shit too. I know this is so disorganized and discombobulated. Please bear with us. But yeah, we're both pretty nerdy.
we're
We're
both
both into
nerdy.
D&D.
We're both into D&D. We're both nerdy, and we'll talk. We're gonna have an episode about nerdiness and D&D, about mental health. No, not nerdiness and asexuality, about mental health and asexuality, just about any topic you can think of. But we always welcome more topics like, or book reviews. Like, hey, you saw a great book. Actually, her name is Angela Tin, and she wrote a very great book that's got a lot of great stuff in it. And we're going to go over a few books and review books here and there and talk about them. And we'll obviously put a spoiler tag on that with the book title in the description of the episode, just so that if you're currently reading that book and you want to see how it goes yourself and you don't want us to spoil any of it, then that'll be on there. And we'll also have content warnings for if we talk about any kind of traumatic things like I'm going to say SA, but I also explain it for people that don't know what that uh, acronym is. It's sexual assault or anything that's kind of graphic. I don't expect us to talk about any graphic things, but sometimes when you talk about asexuality and trauma, sexual assault is a big part of that. So those will also have content warnings because we want to make sure that we don't trigger people, but we want them to know that this is a safe space. And if that's because that's a big issue a lot of times for people wondering if they're ace.
That being said, just to consider this the trigger warning for the whole podcast.
Basically, because we're going to bring up stuff and we have the same, we have basically the same political ideology, so uh, which you'll probably find with a lot of other people in the LGBTQ plus community because there's issues that affect us that make us lean one way or the other. But we won't be. It's not going to be super politics, so don't worry about that. It's going to be mostly A stuff with
But
politics sprinkled
asexuality is
in.
political.
That's true. It is political,
that'll
but
that'll be one of our episodes. Is that the asexuality is political. Yeah.
and We'll sprinkle stuff in. We Alex is great comedic relief. I am semi good with comedy. I'm mostly puns though. You're going to hear a lot of puns. In fact, our logo that we're working on is mostly a pun. So we can't wait to have you listen to more stuff from us. And
We appreciate you listening.
we very much appreciate you listening. If there's, like I said, anything you want a topic to us, you're like, please talk about this. I have
Yeah.
questions. Hit
Yes,
us
when
up.
we get our one fan, we have the one person who's into this podcast and is like, "Can you please talk about BTS?" I'm gonna say no. But anything else, anything
Anything
else,
else?
unless one of them are ace.
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't think so.
I don't think so
I feel
either.
like I have a friend who is very into BTS, and uh, I think they would tell me if if there was an eighth one, because that would be relevant to my interest.
Well, you never know with a boy band because,
I
I
know
mean,
nothing about boy bands. Well, I
oh,
guess I know the classic ones every millennial knows. Well, American
yeah,
millennial
you
knows.
weren't a teenage girl in the 90s.
Nope. I was not a teen at all in the 90s.
We have a little bit of an age gap, but in sync, like, I had no clue Lance was gay, but I also don't have gaydar, so that's a whole nother topic for maybe not even this podcast, but I don't have gaydar. It's a problem because I
Mine is the tracking hasn't updated since 2003.
yeah, so we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great podcast. We're going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be way more organized than this first one.
Yeah, this
This
might
one
even be a
is,
practice run.
it might even be a practice one where we're like, okay, we could have done this better. But we also want to be genuine and just talk kind of the way. The whole reason we came up with this podcast is because late at night, Alex and I talk to each other about A shit. It's like 2 in the morning and we're just going because
Yeah,
it's great
like
conversation.
after we're in a couple. I think we're in one D&D game together. Jesse
Mhm.
dabbles in being a GM.
I do. And
Pray for his soul.
I definitely like the GM a lot. I have taken on too many recently, and this podcast, and work.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
we're gonna
have
talk
a
about polyamory too.
yes, polyamory is the other thing we're going to talk about. And we will also talk about how monogamy can be toxic, but it doesn't have to be. At least that's what I'm going to talk about because
Yeah, I think we both have good takes on the matter, and that's
mhm,
what you're here for, right? Good takes. Suckers.
yes.
Yeah, we both also have ADHD, as you probably didn't need to get this far to tell, but we'll also go into that. Yeah,
Which
and with that, I think we covered about everything we wanted to.
yeah, we definitely
You
did.
wanna leave it here?
Yeah, we can leave it here, and we hope you'll join us for the second one.
Yes,
Um,
or our official first one.
we don't have a pure schedule yet, but I'm thinking what, like every 2 weeks we want to post,
Yeah,
maybe
every 2 weeks,
every two
at
weeks
least till we get into a good groove and
until
we
we get into
decide
a
if
groove.
we want to make this project a thing.
Yeah, so like every 2 weeks, so we'll post this on insert date here.
Yeah. If you were listening to this at whatever point of time you are, hello.
Um, yes, hello. Nice to meet you. Nice to chat with you.
How's the
And
wife? How's the kids?
yes.
As
How's
long as they're not ugly, it's okay.
what?
I'm just kidding.
So we'll catch you next time. Hopefully you'll catch us next time as well. And I don't know. Anything
We
else we
don't
need
have
to
a
close
sign
off
off.
with? We don't have a sign off yet. So ooh, that's a good thing. If you have a sign off suggestion so that we don't ramble needlessly, give it to us. Because my suggestion was shot down hardcore and I'm not going to share it.
Are you saying our podcast needs a safe word?
No, it just needs it needs for me to not to say yakety yak, please come back.
No, we can't do that. I'm sorry.
See, we need help.
Okay, bye.
Bye guys.